Good afternoon, Judge Zager. We welcome your appearance here today, and we're ready for your opening remarks.
All right, thank you. Hopefully I won't have to refer to my notes too much today, but I brought them just in case. First of all, I would like to thank all of you for all of the time and attention that you've devoted to this process. I know it's been a very, very long process, more than usual in this particular case, and I think I was just told I was number 51, so you can see the light at the end of the tunnel at least. And so I do want to thank you for all the time and attention that and courtesy you provided to me as well. I guess a couple of things that I wanted to say as far as my opening remarks and statements here. To me, being a member of, or a justice of the Iowa Supreme Court would be the ultimate in public service, and what I've attempted to do throughout my entire legal career is to devote myself to public service. I think I do have a proven history of public service and my commitment to the improvement of the legal system, and I think this would be a continuation of that. I know some of you have heard this story. I may have told this in front of the whole commission before at one time. One thing that I've always remembered when I left the Whitfield law firm, when I was clerking there in law school, then I had, I guess you'd call it an exit interview with Alan Whitfield. And so we thanked each other for the opportunity to be me to be a clerk there and he for my service there. And the one thing that he gave me some passing advice, and that was just always remember, because I was concerned, I was studying for the bar exam at that time, and he said, well, you'll do fine, but just always remember that a license to practice law isn't a license to make money, it's a license to serve people. And if you always keep that in mind, you'll be just fine. And I think I've now just passed my 30th year of practice a couple weeks ago in the practice of law, and I guess I've never forgotten that, and that's what I've tried to do. So along those lines, I've tried to just outline a little bit about my history, and I know it's in the questionnaire, and I wasn't going to do an opening statement, but I think I was gently persuaded by others that it might be a good idea to do an opening statement for all of you, so I will in fact do that at this time. I don't think I'll take my 10 minutes, try not to, although if you give me 10 minutes, I can usually fill it, as you all well know. But again, I was in private practice.
If you get on the court, you'll learn that.
Okay. But again, I was in the private practice for a period of 19 years, the last 10 of which I was in a sole practitioner, so I was operating my own law office at that time. Through that time, I guess you would call it just a practice with, I hate to use the word ordinary, I don't like to use the word just ordinary people, but that's what I had. I had a practice that involved dealing with people on their day-to-day issues, their life issues, whether it's divorces, living wills, probate, death, all the issues that relate to just people. And I tried to make sure that I provided the best service that I certainly could to them. Also during that period of time then, what I consider to be a public service was my time while I was an assistant county attorney. And those were some of the most enjoyable times that I did have. And of course, I know it says it in my application as well, but at that time then I would have been representing all the boards and commissions of Black Hawk County. And it was very interesting for me because, well, you're dealing with so many different issues. You're dealing with the Board of Health and all the related health issues there. You're dealing with the Veterans Affairs Commission and the benefits for veterans in Black Hawk County. The Conservation Board, that was probably one of the things that may not be as part of my materials, but one of the things that I think I'm probably proudest of is the public use of the lands in Black Hawk County. And what I was responsible for then at that time was handling all the legal work for all the acquisition of the old railroad rights-of-way for the Cedar Valley Nature Trail. So not only in all of Black Hawk County, but then we also assisted in Benton County because they did not have the legal capability to do that, and I was doing it and experienced in doing that. But that was my responsibility. And just all the other boards and commissions that I dealt with there. One of the other things I guess I'm proudest of is, in the county attorney's office at least, was the county guardianship and conservator. It's what we call the county conservator's office, and I know that's made reference to there. but it represents the disadvantaged people of Black Hawk County, the people that have no other person who can look out for them. And I didn't create it, so I'm not going to tell you that I was one that originally created that, but I took it from an office with a part-time person to 2 full-time social workers and a clerical person to do all the pleadings. And of course, what we did there is for people that had no one else, we did, depending upon the circumstances, guardianships, legal conservatorships, representative payees if we were dealing with the Social Security Administration, and all the legal requirements that involved. And it may not sound like much, but there are literally hundreds of people out there that I believe we assisted that would either be homeless, would not have money, don't stay on their medications, you name it. There's all sorts of people with substance abuse issues, mental health issues, and they can't handle their own affairs, and that's what we did. And I think I indicated in my application, typically had a caseload of over 300 individuals that we were responsible for. So that to me was providing access to the court, which I think is so important. The other thing during the course of my private practice was 10 plus years of being an attorney with the IOLTA Commission, again representing low-income disadvantaged people in domestic relations and dissolution actions. And again, literally hundreds of people. Usually one of the requirements is they had to have children, so it wasn't just people wanting to get divorced with property. It was a matter of representing all of the interests of these people. And not all of them, but I'd say 85 to 90% of them did result in some type of court order for custody, visitation, or a dissolution of marriage. And so I'm very proud of that and feel that that was a valuable service to the legal community as well. You know, once you get on the bench, it's a whole different little ball game, and public service there is just simply different. But what I do believe is that my time as a district court judge is just invaluable as a training ground, as a battleground for being a justice on the Iowa Supreme Court. I think it's for a couple of reasons. I think the sheer breadth of cases that you see from, as a general jurisdiction judge, of course, I can hear anything, and it may seem small, like a small claims or a mental health commitment or a substance abuse commitment, all the way up to multi-million-dollar cases and murder trials. But the sheer breadth and of things that you see, I think, is invaluable for somebody who's going to be on the Supreme Court. I also think there's another real benefit, I think, to you as commissioners, but also to the public in general, is over the last 11 years now that I've been a district court judge, it's sort of an open book. I mean, you have a rare insight into who I am, I think, as a person, who I am as a trial judge, and how I conduct myself in the courtroom. And I think my record at this point is that everybody knows when they're coming into my courtroom that they're going to be treated with respect and dignity, that they are going to have a full and fair trial, that I'm going to give careful consideration to all of the information that's been provided to me, and that ultimately they're going to trust my judgment on what's happened in the courtroom. And that really kind of feeds right into, or leads right into, the fact that, you know, that's what a justice of the Iowa Supreme Court is going to do. Their primary task, and certainly not all of it, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but their primary task is to be the court of last resort to determine whether I, as a district court judge, made a mistake. I mean, that's what you're looking at. That's what a justice of the Iowa Supreme Court is going to be doing primarily, is determining how I conducted myself in the courtroom, perhaps, whether I abused my discretion, whether I reached a legally correct conclusion, or simply made evidentiary mistakes. It could be any number of things. But I do believe that trial experience is simply invaluable, because I also think that it gives you a perspective as to the events and occurrences that are happening while things are happening in the courtroom. And know we have a mix of lawyers and non-lawyers here, of course, but those decisions have to be made, and they have to be made immediately. And it's hard sometimes, and I was just talking to one of the other candidates who you just interviewed as well about even as lawyers, sometimes you have to make snap decisions about whether or not you're going to object, not object, how it's going to affect the jury. So I think all those things give you great insight as to who I am and what I am. But ultimately, the role of the Supreme Court is to make that final decision about how the trial court's operating, and that's why I think it's invaluable types of experience. I think also, don't know how much time I've taken, but also I fully understand all of the administrative things that are required of the Supreme Court, and I don't sit here today claiming that I have a full feel for all the things that they do administratively. I know there's all sorts of boards and commissions and other responsibilities that they have, and so I'm not saying that I have a full grasp of all those things, but I'm just confident in my ability to be an administrator, to look at things clearly and understand what's going on. Along that line, I guess I am going to just mention lastly about the retention election of last fall. And I do think that there needs to be some progress made, if I could say that way, when it comes to the Supreme Court and its public image. And when I say, I really mean the judicial branch, not just the Supreme Court, even though I understand the exact and direct results of the vote of the Supreme Court justices. It does resonate throughout the entire judicial branch, and I can pretty well assure you of that. And I think we need to do something that's going to be transforming of the Supreme Court, as they're the figurehead. They are the head of the judicial branch, and we need to do some work in that regard to improve the public image of the Supreme Court, which will, by extension, improve the image of the entire judicial branch, and that's something that I would be committed to doing, should I be selected on the Supreme Court. I think along those lines, I think just the qualities of me, and then I think I'll let the questions might be a lot more interesting than my presentation, but I think I have the temperament, I think I have the demeanor, I think I have the personality, the people skills to work along those lines and to get some things done with that, in addition to fully understanding that we need to make decisions. I mean, that's what we need to do, and so that is what I'm committed to doing as well. Like I said, I don't know how many minutes I've taken, but I kind of got out the things that I guess I wanted to talk about, and would be happy to answer whatever questions that you might have.
Thank you, Judge. Let's start on this side of the table. Mr. Pace.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Judge.
Good afternoon.
Nice to see you again. I wanted you to know I've received some phone calls from folks on your behalf, very complimentary of you, and I hope they're watching so that they know that I've mentioned them. I won't say their names, but
All right, thank you.
they're non-lawyers and lawyers, both.
Oh, I appreciate them.
And they know you in various contexts, so it's a credit to your record that those
so
folks
much.
feel that way about you. Can you refresh my recollection regarding the times that I know we have sent your name up to the governor before, and I'm trying to recall when we did that, what those years were, and was that Court of Appeals?
Those were both on the Court of Appeals, and I think one of them was, probably was 2 years ago in Right Now, I think was the final decision, and then the next time we had an opening, then I also came out. So those are the two times. I think it's maybe been, or I don't think it was just a year ago, I think it was 2 years ago. And then the next time that we applied, or that I applied, then I did not get out at that time. I'm calling it getting out of commission.
I know what you mean. No, thank you. Thank you.
But that's my recollection.
Yeah, I know that you've appeared before us several times, and we
Yes.
picked you a couple of different times. Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome.
Any other questions down that way? Mr. Fitzgibbons.
Judge, thank you very much for being here. Your comments were very interesting, and I wanted to follow up on one of the comments that you did in fact make, and that had to do with the retention election. Justices of the Supreme Court, I know, read the newspaper, and they obviously interact with our citizens on a day-to-day basis, be it lawyers, non-lawyers, what have you. What effect do you think public perception or public opinion should have on the rulings of a Supreme Court going forward? In other words, if chosen to serve this court and serve the state, what effect does a retention vote have on a justice?
I don't think it should have any. And I think that goes along with any decision that I make now as a trial judge, that an appellate court would make, whether it be the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court. I just don't think you can operate an appellate court based upon public opinion. And I just don't see that that is something that should enter into it. I mean, every case that you're going to look at is going to have unique factual circumstances. It's going to have, and I'm not going to go and ask everybody what their opinion is about this unique factual circumstance, and even as all the lawyers and non-lawyers too know as well, even a small difference in set of facts could have a different outcome. And I'm not going to rely upon public sentiment or public opinion in ruling on anything that I do. I just don't think it really has a place there.
Thank you.
So that's just my opinion.
Any other questions that way? On the other side, Mr. Cook.
Judge, thank you again for applying, and we're all here, of course, because of the Varnum decision, sometimes referred to as the gay marriage decision, which could also be referred to in some ranks as protect the Constitution decision. But I don't want to ask you about that case.
Okay.
I want to ask you about your marriage of almost 40 years, and I see your family's here today. What about that achievement that you think adds to your qualifications for this job?
Well, it adds a whole set of life experiences, I think. I guess I'll kind of answer that in hopefully a pretty direct way, but when we talk about some of the criticism with the retention election, I guess I'll go back to that, where you have comments made about the justices being elitist or somehow out of touch, or that they're aloof, and all the other ways that you can describe, that I heard described about these justices. And I think we have to put a more positive face on this. I mean, we're all, and I've said this to a couple of the commissioners, we're all just people. I mean, my wife and I guess I did think about this over the course of the last few days in preparation of being here. You know, we start out with nothing. We have a baby, right after, being married. We don't have an automobile for a year and a half. We live in Colorado. My brother's living there. We have a family car, so if we want to come back to Iowa, you make do. We borrow his car, we come back. A year and a half later, I think, I hitchhiked from Iowa City to Waterloo several times so I could pick up a vehicle. We're all just people, and certainly my wife's a very loving and understanding person. She's been a tremendous mother to our children. We have 3 beautiful grandchildren now. Maybe it's putting up with me, I don't know, but it's that give and take. That's what a marriage is. That's what a relationship is with people, and you have to work on it. And I think, sort of relating it to the Supreme Court, you're going to have to work on this relationship, and we're going to have to do some relationship building with all the members of the judicial branch, and certainly externally we need to reach out to a new governor that we have, a new legislature that we have, and there has to be this give and take. Nobody can be right all the time. Nobody can be wrong all the time. I guess she won't want to come up on camera. We'll ask her that question. But we've had our battles, and you work through those things, and you know that you want to stick together.
Thank you, Judge.
I don't know if that answers your question exactly.
Oh,
But
thank you. Thank you very much.
Questions? Dan, Mr. Holm, do you have a question?
I do. Thank you, Justice Wiggins, and thank you, Judge Zager, for putting your name in this time. I know from personal experience that you have a reputation, and a well-deserved one, for being an outstanding district court judge. But you also have a reputation for bringing qualities of respect for people and empathy to your job as a judge. And I wonder if you'd just briefly tell us how you view the importance of those human qualities in making a good district court judge and a good appellate judge.
Well, I think under any circumstance, you always have to look at the individual involved, and the simplest thing is to look at a criminal defendant, I guess, and to look at the individual and to determine, perhaps what put them there. I don't claim to be a social worker, and I don't want to be a social worker, but living through all the life experiences that I have, everybody has their own life experiences that they need to rely upon a little bit in making these types of judgments. But, raising kids, I mean, that's a challenge. Everybody knows that has children here. Those bring in new experiences. Going through law school with, 2 children and then having your 3rd child in law school. My wife, of course, she's worked full-time since, for the last 35 years when she had her certificate to do medical transcription. I think that has served me well, not only in the private practice of law, but also as a judge, and I think I do have the respect then of the lawyers and the litigants, whether they're represented, unrepresented. It doesn't really make any difference to me. I'm going to give them the fullest opportunity to hear what they have to say, and I often do this. If I know what I'm going to be deciding at that particular point in time, I like to tell them to their face and explain on the record, if that's on the record, exactly what I'm doing and why. And I never have any reservations about doing that, because if somebody needs to go to prison, somebody shouldn't have custody, oftentimes if I know what I'm going to be doing, they deserve to hear it from me. And I'm very comfortable looking them in the eye and telling them this is what I'm going to be doing and this is why I'm doing it. And I don't know if that answers your question either, but I think it's all part of your life experiences, and see, my time's up. But
No, your time's not up, Judge.
it's all part of that life experiences and my personal experience, and I hope that answers your question.
Do we have any further questions? Judge, I can't let you leave here because I see your family back there, and I know your daughters, so you need to introduce them.
All right. This is my wife of 39 years, Diane Zager, and my daughter, Tara Zager Hall, she's our youngest daughter, and she's a lawyer here in Des Moines at the Davis Law Firm. So we'll give them a shout out too. So, thank you.
Nice to meet you.
And I appreciate them being here for moral support and to see how this all process goes too.
And they got some FaceTime in the camera, so.
Yeah.
They weren't looking for that, I can guarantee you that.
We thank you very much and wish you the best
Thank
luck.
you all
Thank
for
you,
your
Judge.
consideration and time.